Hi everyone, Jennifer here from My Purpley Life. Today I'm going to teach you how to stamp with these wonderful stamps from Sweet Stamp Shop. Here's a few examples of how I've used these stamps in my planner. The first planner I use is an Erin Condren Life Planner. Another example I have is in my monthly calendar. So you can see I've used these stamps to keep track of birthdays, my daughter's dance classes, and also some bills as well as appointments such as meetings and dentist appointments. Sweet Stamp Shop has a great variety of stamps just for planners, from work to fitness, even household and chores. They work well with any type of planner. I get tons of questions about how do I use these types of stamps and what types of ink do I choose. Some of you may be new to stamping or have tried it and are having difficulty getting it to look right. So I'm going to teach you the basics of stamping. Let's get started. First, you want to make sure you have a nice work surface. You're going to stamp on a smooth, hard table or a countertop. And you want to use a non-stick craft sheet or a craft mat. You can even use a piece of paper underneath your work to protect your table. Next, you're going to choose which stamps you're going to use. I love this stamp set right here. It's called Plan to Eat because I use it to keep track of my meals, such as my dinner, my lunch, and I love this cook stamp to keep track of when I actually cook my meals. This is a hydrate stamp to help me keep track of my water intake, and I love that this set also has some grocery stamps so that it helps me plan out when I go grocery shopping. Next, we need to prep our stamp for use. Since we're using clear stamps, we're going to need an acrylic block or a clear block to mount our stamp on. There are lots of different sizes of blocks, and we're going to use the best one that's suited for the stamp size that we're using. This one in particular I use for my larger stamps. See how it has some grooves here on the side? This helps me grip the block and gives me a nice firm hold for when I'm stamping. Another one that I like to use is this one from Making Memories. I use this one a lot, again because it has the grooves on the side and it also has these nice grids that help me when I'm aligning my stamps. Some other blocks that I use are these ones by Fiskars. You can grab these at your local craft store, Michael's, Joann's, or Hobby Lobby, and they come in lots of different sizes in this 4-piece set. I only have 3 here that I mainly use for these types of stamps. This little tiny guy here is the smallest one in the set, and it's the perfect size to use with the little icons in the stamp sets. Now, if you can't find those blocks at your local craft store, Sweet Stamp Shop also provides these small blocks for sale on their shop. This one that I have here is the small acrylic block. They also have different sizes. They have a larger one and also a round one. So as I mentioned earlier, you want to choose the block that's best suited for the stamp size that you're using. The reason is if you use a mount that's bigger than the actual stamp, you can also get ink on the mount, and then that's where the messy part comes in. So next I want to talk to you guys about ink pads. The inks that I found work best in paper planners are pigment inks and chalk inks. The 2 types of ink pads that I have here are by Avery Elle and Mama Elephant, and those are the brands that I've been loving lately. I love using pigment inks because their colors tend to be more bright and vibrant. Another ink pad that I use is this oil-based pigment ink by VersaFine Onyx Black. I found that this ink pad creates very detailed images of your stamps. Now the reason why pigment inks work better is because they dry on top of the paper. It doesn't soak into the paper like dye ink does. It's also important to note that pigment ink takes a while to dry. So if you're not careful, this can cause smearing. So make sure to wait a little bit and let it dry. Another pigment ink brand that you may have seen is this by Colorbox and this by Versacolor. Now the great thing about these Versacolor ink pads is that they're really small and you can get a bunch of different colors for the same price as this really big ink pad. When it comes to using chalk inks, I love using these by Versa Magic, and they come in these little dewdrop shapes. So again, you can get a lot of different colors. Another ink pad that I use is by Quick Quotes, and these are called Powder Puff Chalk inks. They're a little bit larger than the Versa Magic, but they come in lots of different colors as well. And lastly, I love using these by Prima Marketing Company, and they're called chalk edgers. And they have like this nice little handle that's great to use when you're stamping your inking up your images. Just like pigment inks, these chalk inks take some time to dry, so you really want to make sure you allow time to let these inks set before you mess around with your project. Now we're going to prep our stamp for inking. I'm going to peel off this little plastic sheet that's protecting the stamp and then peel off the stamp that I want. So you can see they're really small and they're tiny. Now there's two sides to this stamp. There's the flat side and then the raised side where you'll actually be placing the ink. You want to place the mount on the flat side. So I'm going to take my acrylic block and just stamp it directly onto the top of that stamp. You can either place the stamp onto the block or do what I did there where I placed the stamp on the table and then press the block onto it. As we're going to apply ink to the stamp, we're going to gently tap the stamp onto the ink pad. About 2 or 3 times should do it. You don't need that much pressure, and if you are using a lot of pressure to get ink onto the stamp, your ink pad is probably drying up and you can either re-ink the ink pad or probably get a new one. Too much pressure can cause the stamp to get soaked, and this is called over-inking. And over-inking will cause your image to be blurry. I'm making sure that it's completely coated because you don't want uneven inking. Using your fingertips, you want to hold the block firmly on all 4 corners. Here I'm using my thumb and my middle finger, and then I'm going to use my 2 index fingers right in the bottom to press down in the middle. You want to hold the stamp and press straight down, making sure that you're pressing on all corners and edges, not just the middle of the stamp. You don't need to apply a lot of pressure to do this. I noticed that on my image it came out a little light and uneven. This is probably because I didn't ink my stamp up very well. So I'm going to go ahead and tap it a few more times and make sure that it's really evenly coated onto the stamp. Lift the stamp straight up as you're coming off the paper. Don't stay too long on the paper. Now that gave me a really nice image there. I'm going to ink this again and show you how not to stamp. You want to make sure again that you go down straight and not at an angle. And you want to make sure that you don't rock or wiggle it. Sometimes there could be ink on the edges of the stamp and can cause a blurry image. Here again, I am going to really ink up that stamp and soak it up. You can see how I've even gotten some ink on the mount there. But you can see how I've really put a lot of pressure on it as well, and that's why it caused a blurry image. So you can see the difference between the images there. You really need to practice with your stamps. I'm going to do some practicing with this VersaFine Onyx Black ink just to show you guys that not all stamps are the same. I'm going to be using a couple of these word stamps. Some stamps may require more or less ink, and some stamps need more pressure on one side than the other. It's always important to test out your stamps before using them on your actual project. Again, I'm holding the stamp firmly on all four corners and then pressing straight down the middle. And then lifting straight up. You can see how that produced a really nice crisp image. I'm going to ink it up again and try again. And this time it seemed that I used too much pressure. So what I'm going to do, a little trick that I like to do, is sometimes it helps to use a mouse pad to make the surface a little bit more squishy. You can get any mouse pad from any office supply store. This just creates a cushion for the stamp. So let's try that again. Just look at how this stamped image came out. It came out really nice and detailed. It's really important that you do practice with your stamps. You need to adjust your technique depending on the type of stamp that you're using. So after you're done stamping, you want to go ahead and clean it off right away with either a baby wipe, or you can just use warm water and soap. You want to place the stamps back into its original packaging. They are clear and they're small and tiny, so you don't want to lose them. Also, you want to keep them free from any dirt or dust. If you do notice there's some staining on the stamp, that's okay. It doesn't affect the use of the stamp at all. So that's it for today. I hope you find this video helpful to you, and thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.